It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
So the third mistake that we see folks make, and this is sort of a perfect dovetail, because you said don't be miserly, don't cut it off at the 25%. I think that the majority of folks don't fall into that place where they have that problem. I think most high income earners, they set the bar too low. We've said it ad nauseum that we think you should be saving 25%. And yet, as folks' income increases, they make more money, they're not always setting to that. They set the bar too low and they settle for less than what they should be doing.
The bottom 90% of Americans just don't save a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that life is hard.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm willing to give a lot of grace. That's why you got to start really young so a little goes a long way. That's one of the most powerful things out there is time.
Yep.
But, the top 9% save about 12%, and then the top 1% save 40% of their income. So you can see how this is, the disparity between that gets to be big. I want you don't have to save 40% like the 1% does, but I do want you to really try to focus on doing for scarcity. One of the things is I've gotten pay raises, I've tried to take a little bit of it so that I didn't let my lifestyle expand, because that's where people are screwing up. And Bo, the whole title here is they set the bar too low, because I think a lot of people they hit some internal goals and then they just kind of like, well, I did it. I maxed out my 401k. Yep. Let's call it a day.
I have a lot of friends who I've been hanging out with since they were in their early 20s, and I'm like, hey, look, man, you got to just go max out your Roth IRA. Just go max out your Roth IRA. And they're like, okay, I can't do that, but I'm going to save $100 a month. And they finally get to the point where they're doing $500, they max out the Roth, and that's awesome. But then fast forward now a decade later, and all they've ever done is max out their Roth IRA. And I'm like, man, that's great. That's wonderful. That's awesome. But your income, your trajectory changed, and your savings did not follow suit. Now, you said something a second ago, Brian, where you're talking about how the top 1% save nearly 40% of their income, or even the top 9% save 12%. Not only, I mean, and the whole point of this show is why higher paid Americans
are still broke.
I think we're going to talk about why they especially need to be saving, because something is going to be very different for them than from the bottom 90%. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and look, this is the reality, is that if you're somebody who makes $55,000, and you save 10%, you'll be all right.
Sure.
Because there is a societal safety net. And I want to talk about Social Security and what it can provide for you. Now, we put some numbers together, and you can see what we have here on the bottom axis is that we have what your income is, and then we have, how much Social Security will provide. That's what the white line is Social Security. And you can see for most people, it gets up to be a little over between $25,000 and $50,000 for the household. And notice how close. That's the black line there is the living expenses. The green line is actual income. Well, we know living expenses are going to be less than income.
No savings.
So really what you're thinking about for financial independence is, when do I have enough money to cover my living expenses? That's really what you're trying to save for. And you notice the white line of Social Security, the safety net of society here in America, is pretty close to the black line. But as your income goes up, your responsibility, the gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It is more and more on your shoulders. So don't take that for granted. I mean, look, somebody even up to $150,000, the government covering close to a third of your living expenses seems pretty good. But if you are that top 10% that's over $150,000, you can see you've got to take this serious.
Yeah, it's a big deal. We found that if you look at the percentage of living expenses that Social Security covers at each income level, you can see that for someone who makes around $25,000, Social Security will cover 85 to 90% of their living expenses. At $100,000, it drops to about 50%. At $150,000, just like you said, Brian, it drops to about 35%. And then once you do get into that $200,000 range and above, Social Security is going to cover less than 30% of that need. So if your desire is not to work forever, is to achieve financial independence, is to be able to do what you want, when you want, the way you want, the burden of that is going to fall on you, and you have to take it seriously Just because you have a high income doesn't protect you from that. Again, these benchmarks that folks set, and I know so many folks, maxing out a 401k is a big deal. That's why we have it in the financial order of operations. Putting 19,500 is awesome, and it's incredible. It's a feat to be noted. But if your income keeps going up and you make 100, 120, 150, so on and so forth, maxing out the 401k is just not going to be enough. You got to be doing the Roth IRAs. You got to be doing the backdoor Roths. You got to go into hyperaccumulation and do the taxable account. Just marking that one box might not be enough for higher income folks.
Well, let's do the math on it. Look at $200,000. If we were just saving what our recommendation is 20 to 25% and investing that of your gross income, that is somewhere you need to be saving annually somewhere between $40,000 to $50,000. Yep. You just said the annual 401k maximum for 2021 is $19,500.
Yep.
Even if you put a Roth IRA, because right underneath 200 or right around 200,000, you can still do a Roth.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you were a household, so you're doing that 12,000 plus the 19, you're not reaching the $40,000 to $50,000. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of folks who are going to say, you know what, I maxed out my 401k.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, they maxed it out, by the way, when they crossed probably 125,000. Yep. Now they make 200,000. Still saving 19,000 or whatever the annual maximum is allowed. Guys, you're patting yourself on the back when realize more and more is riding on your shoulders, and you're also getting closer and closer to your retirement goal. So that's not a good recipe. Getting closer to your retirement goal, saving less, but your income needs and your living expenses increase, you're creating a recipe that really could create disappointment in the long term.